Lemos, or is it Lemos? Lemos. Lemons.
I think I've heard them say Lemos. Like it's like,
Lemos.
yeah.
God.
Amanda Lemos versus
Oh.
Verna Jandiroba.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Hello and welcome to the UCF podcast. My name is Francis. I'm here with my co-host Clark, and we're going to get into tonight's fight night. Amanda Lemos versus Verna Jandiroba. What do you think is going to happen in this one, Clark?
Well, unfortunately, in my opinion, here's the thing. Verna is a grappler, and Amanda is more of a striker, right? Mm-hmm. Generally speaking. So what tends to happen in fights like these is that usually the striker kind of just gets grappled. A worst-case scenario is that it's really boring. Verna just controls the entire fight. Nothing really happens as she wins by decision. The most exciting thing that'll happen is that Verna, submits her at round 1 in 45 seconds. I think that was probably more likely is that she's going to go into decision just by being controlled the entire time. Verna looks pretty good in general on the ground. And this has been true recently, but I'm really not convinced that Amanda's going to have done enough grappling training to catch up. It doesn't seem like a lot of strikers do that. Maybe she has, maybe she hasn't, but I think she probably hasn't. I'm going to go with Verna Jandiroba.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid argument and not a bad pick. I'm leaning towards Verna myself, honestly. I'm going to be picking Verna Jandiroba pretty much for the
I thought you were about to do that's a good pick, Clark, but actually you're fucking stupid.
What? No. The one little caveat I'll put in here, the one thing to note is that Amanda's last win was against Mackenzie Dern, who was supposed to be a grappling phenom. She is actually really good on the ground when she gets a chance to get there, but Dern just got her ass whooped by Lemos. I don't think she's going to be able to do that to Verna. Verna is just a very serious WMMA fighter. And what do I actually mean by that? What I mean by that is that she doesn't waste time in the cage, and she tries to get a win every second that she's in there. She isn't spending time just fucking around at range pretending to punch people, okay? These girls are both actually pretty good, and the more that I've looked at this fight, the more that I've kind of gone back to see who these girls have been fighting recently, the more I've realized this is actually potentially a good matchup. I'm giving it a 40% chance to be a good fight. And
in WMMA, whenever it's the two Brazilian women, that's usually your best bet at a very solid, good matchup.
It's the best we could hope for. And yeah, picking Verna Jandiroba in this one. In our co-main event, I actually really like this fight for a number of reasons because...
It hasn't happened yet.
That's true. What has happened already is Brad Tavares has paid his dues 100 times over. Before we started recording, we were just going over some of the most notable losses on Brad Tavares' record in the UFC going all the way back to 2015.
He's lost to your favorite fighter, whoever it is.
Yeah, pretty much. You like Israel Adesanya? He beat Brad Tavares. Do you like Dricus du Plessis? He beat Brad Tavares. Wow, do you like Robert Whittaker? He beat Brad Tavares. I'm creating my own tongue twister for myself here. This is all to say that we're going to be picking Jung Park. Park is crafty. He's scrappy. He's frankly durable. He did get... did he get knocked out recently? Let me double check. Not recently.
I don't think it's been recently. He has been knocked out, I'm pretty sure, but I think it's been a couple years now. You heal. The chin goes back to normal.
Absolutely, yeah. I believe it was RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez, who knocked him out back in 2021. His last fight was a split decision loss to Andre Muniz, but Muniz is not bad. He's a pretty good fighter. And before that, we have a who's who of mean-looking Russian dudes that he's beaten. So I'm picking the Iron Turtle, Jung Park.
Yeah, I think I gotta go with Jung Park on this one. Tavares, I'm sure, honestly, that he's going to put on a good show. I'm kind of hopeful this will be a fun little co-main event scenario, but I feel like Tavares is a little older, and I feel like he's kind of on the tail end of his career a little bit. I don't know if this will be his last fight ever, but I really don't think this is the beginning of some huge comeback. So I think I got to go with Park.
Yeah, absolutely. Before that, just quick note, I don't 100% know why, but we've stacked this card full of South Koreans.
Yeah, this would have been the perfect card to have the first North Korean fighter. That's all I'm saying, Dana. Just think
about it, next up we have Steve Garcia versus Sungwoo Choi. I'm picking Steve. Steve has looked good recently. He has, I believe, 3 KO wins in a row. Sungwoo Choi has been very hit or miss in the UFC. Flipping back through his record, kind of funny. He almost only wins when the Korean Zombie was fighting, and the Korean Zombie is not fighting this Saturday.
to give an aura boost to other South Koreans.
Yeah. But, stat-wise, like physicality, these guys have pretty much the same reach. They're the same height. Garcia is a striker. Sungwoo Choi is a little bit more of like a mix-it-up sort of guy. I think Garcia is going to have that advantage on the feet. I honestly see this one ending by KO for Garcia.
Yeah, the thing is, one of the things that Choi had for a little while was that he really didn't get knocked out. I mean, he would lose sometimes, but it would be by decision. But then he did get knocked out, I think, a couple of years ago. Has been fighting nearly as often since. And yeah, I think this is one of those situations where he's been knocked out once. He's not going to be the same after this. Garcia, I don't know. Like, it seems like he's got enough power, even though, featherweight's not necessarily a super knockout division, but I think he's got the power to get the job done here. I'd love to disagree with you so that one of us could be wrong on this. I'm going to go with Garcia as well.
All right, awesome. Moving on down, we got Kurt Holobaugh versus, good luck saying that name.
Great, Francis.
Kanan.
I'm going to say Kanan.
Kanan.
We're on a first name basis with Kanan, so it's fine.
Oh, yeah, cool. Kurt Holobaugh has fought his way into the UFC, out of the UFC, and back in again. He spent some time out of the UFC. He got cut. He's back. He hasn't looked great since he came back. He lost his last fight. Kanan, I believe, lost his last fight as well, but he's on his first run in the UFC.
Yeah, I think Kanan, that was his first fight he lost. So.
Yep. If you look at those records, Kurt's got double the fights just about as Kanan. And just when we're looking at these sorts of game of inches, we have two fighters who haven't distinguished themselves. They don't have some technique that's crazy. They don't have some portion of their game that's really pulling ahead. So really, what small things are going to put one guy ahead of the other in this fight? One is going to be the mileage that's already on Kurt, that is not on Kanan. And the other thing is that reach advantage. It's not huge, but 3 inches, it's going to make a difference. If Kanan is being smart with his strikes, if he's using straight punches at distance, he's going to be able to keep Kurt off of him. Kurt's one of these guys who prefers the hooks. So I'm going to be picking Kanan in this one.
Yeah, I have a feeling this one might become a bit of a grappling fight. Kanan did get knocked out in his first fight. He was trying to do grappling in that fight when he got tagged. The thing is that I'm really just not super convinced that Kurt is going to go in there and do any sort of knockouts. He's, I think, had maybe 1 knockout in the UFC, maybe 1 or 2, but he's really not like a knockout artist. He also does a lot of grappling, and I do think that age, a little more mileage on him, and the reach disadvantage is probably going to just compound together and give Kanan that edge. So I got to go with Kanan as well.
All right, we're agreeing on a lot of stuff today.
Yeah.
That can't go wrong.
We're going to be so wrong.
Yeah, before that, we have Cody Durden versus Bruno Silva. A nice little flyweight bout. This should be
little. Bruno Silva is 5'4".
That's right. Cody Durden just isn't that good. He's also not that bad. Bruno Silva, on the other hand, obviously at a little bit of a size disadvantage, but the difference is he's not coming off of a loss. His last fight was a win over Tyson Nam. He got a submission win there too. And
he's on a little bit of a streak, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. And what's kind of funny is Cody Durden's last loss was by submission. I think they're trying to set up Bruno Silva to get another submission win here, and I'm going to be picking him for it.
Yeah, and the thing you have to note as well is that Silva's not ranked. Durden is 14 in the division. I think this is kind of like a, hey, if you can impress us here, Silva, if you can pull something off, then there you go. You might have a little number next to your name soon, too. I don't know. I haven't really seen either of these guys fight much. I think I maybe saw Durden fight one time a few years ago. But personally, I think despite the fact he's just a little guy, I don't know. I struggled to ever pick a guy who's 5'4", but this guy seems pretty squirrely. He seems like he could probably pull it off. I'm going to go with Silva. I might regret it, honestly. I was kind of before this thinking of going with Durden, but then you said you didn't like how his face looked before we started talking, so that tipped me over. So it's your fault if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's right. And before that, holy shit, the return of Doo-Ho Choi. If you don't know who this guy is, you owe it to yourself to go back and watch Cub Swanson versus Doo-Ho Choi. It was the fight of the year back in, God, what was it, 2015 probably?
God.
He's never looked as good as he did in that fight, and he did not win that fight. He has like lost every fight he's been booked in since.
I think he had a draw.
Okay, so you're really adding on to my point. Now, Bill Algeo, on the flip side, is not a world beater. He's not an insane fighter. He's coming off of a KO loss. So, and he's not even young. He's like 35 years old. So, in every possible way, they are trying to give the Korean Superboy a chance for one of his signature knockouts that he has not secured in a decade. But if you remember when Doo-Ho Choi was knocking people out, the guy looked fucking different. He was incredibly fast, and his punches were incredibly sharp. The big problem just is that he had this enormous drop-off. If he could not knock you out in the first round, he had to rely on toughness. He slows down, he becomes very hittable, and he actually isn't that hard to hurt either. It makes this one really hard to pick. Because I think they want Doo-Ho Choi to knock out Bill Algeo.
I think that's the setup as well. The one thing that kind of made me go against Doo-Ho Choi is looking at, like, I think relatively recently, not like that recent because he hasn't fought in a while, but I think in 2019, before he took a significant break, he got knocked out by Charles Jourdain, I think.
Yes, he did. And before that, he got knocked out by Jeremy Stevens. And before that was that, it was 2016, actually. He had that fight of the year against Cub Swanson. Yeah, it's just not been good for him. He took a fight to a draw last year in February. It's just really tough. I really want to pick Doo-Ho Choi.
Yeah,
and I think that's why I'm going to pick. I think that's why I'm going to pick Bill Algeo is because
you want it.
Everything is set up for this to work for Doo-Ho Choi, and there's no way it's gonna fucking work. This guy just gave up some genuine part of himself in that fight against Cub Swanson. They both did. They've both never looked that good ever since. And it sucks. It sucks, but I just can't pick him. I'm sorry, I'm picking Bill Algeo.
Yeah, and the thing is too, if you look to this fight that he drew, I think it was literally one of those just like we're on the ground for the entire fight and no one does anything type ones. That's how it ended up being a draw. There was like a total amount of significant strikes was incredibly low. So you really can't even glean anything from that. I don't know, man. I don't think I can pick Choi. I'm going to go with Algeo. Maybe he'll surprise us and we'll look really stupid, but I think it would be pretty shocking for him to come back after all this time and just fucking look great, even against Bill Algeo.
Yeah. Hard to disagree with you there. And getting into our prelims, we have, guess what, more South Koreans. Down at featherweight, we have Jung Yong Lee versus Haider Emil. These guys are both not well known and kind of new. Taking a quick look at them live on the pod.
Live, he doesn't even look it up beforehand, folks. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Emil, I believe, has not lost professionally yet. He debuted in the UFC, I think it was this year or it was late last year, but he debuted and he won. I think it was a KO.
Well, I'm going to take this moment to just cut in and say, actually, I did do research ahead of time. Sometimes I just like to double check.
When you lie? When you're not being truthful?
Double check what I wrote down, okay?
He doesn't realize he can just edit whatever he wants in here. He lies all the time in the pod.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure to cut that out. So Lee hasn't lost since 2017. Emil is undefeated. Now, Lee actually does have a few knockouts, but those are like in the road to UFC. He's actually picked up like a decent win already against Blake Bider. Unanimous decision, not that exciting. Before that, he had a split decision. Haider Emil, on the other hand, is getting knockouts pretty consistently. And you know what's kind of weird is the reach advantage that Lee has, because just looking at these two guys on the UFC website, like I really want to see these guys stand next to each other, because Lee's arms do not actually look like they're that much longer than Emil's.
Yeah, it might be just some framing shit there, but
yeah, I am going to be picking Hyder Emil. I think he's probably going to win by
God
knockout.
I was gonna pick him.
Well, then you got to say it first, dude.
I do. I think I agree. Knockout seems likely. I don't know. He seems like he's looking a little better. Before UFC, in the UFC, he didn't look bad. Knockout, nothing to sneeze at. These are two guys they're clearly putting up so they can like clash, and one can finally get his first loss in the UFC. I don't know. I don't want to pick Lee though. I wanted to pick Emil, but then we're gonna pick out all the same ones. What are we? Besties?
Well, I mean, if there's a right answer, there's nothing wrong with choosing the right answer.
And then we're gonna pick it and both be like just incredibly wrong. That's the real danger. Could you imagine if we just got like the anti-parlay correct, both of us correctly? We have to like fucking ritual on the podcast. Anyways, I'm gonna pick Emil.
Giving me lots to cut out today.
No, do you want to leave that part in?
Okay. Moving down, we have Brian Kelleher versus Cody Gibson. This is another one that's hard to pick just because these guys both kind of suck. But Brian Kelleher is so old. He's 37 years old. He's lost his last 3 fights. He was knocked out and submitted twice in those 3 fights that he's lost. Now, Cody the Renegade Gibson has lost 2 out of his last 3 fights, but he did get a submission win in one of those 3 fights. I'm really just picking based on age, 36 instead of 37, and that size advantage that Cody Gibson has. He is a lot taller. He has a lot more reach. He's just a bigger guy in general. Brian Kelleher also is not the most cut dude. He usually walks into the octagon with a little bit of fat, which means when it comes to weight cutting, Cody Gibson is going to be a bigger guy on fight night. And Brian Kelleher is just hittable. He's slower. He's old. He's easy to hurt. I'm picking Cody Gibson.
Yeah, I think you have to go with Gibson here, really because of the age difference a little bit, but also you've got the height, and you've got, I think, a pretty substantial reach advantage, right? Like you can't, 5 inches, that's not nothing small. And Kelleher would really need some way to get through that, to like surpass that. I don't think he's really got anything in him that's going to enable him to do that. Maybe, 6 years ago. Nowadays, I'm not really convinced. I got to go with Cody Gibson as well.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, and you're exactly right. Like there was a time when Brian Kelleher was actually pretty good, when his fight name Boom made sense, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
Sad. All right, and moving down, we have Miranda Maverick versus Jan Barboza. Maverick was a prospect at one point, and she's just run into trouble in her little UFC run here. She is coming off of a couple of wins. But, hey, look, that's a familiar name. Jasmine Jasadavius beat her back in 2023. Yeah. She also had, she ran into trouble in a couple of her earlier UFC fights, but she has been growing. She has been maturing in this UFC division. And, beating Andrea Lee in her last fight. Lee was old, but that's not a bad win. Priscilla Cachoeira getting that arm bar, that's not a bad win. She's only 27 years old. She's starting to come into her own. Miranda Maverick, a legitimate prospect in this women's flyweight division. Jan Barboza, the witch, however, has about half the professional experience and ran into more of her trouble earlier in her career. Like those 2 losses came on the regional Brazilian scene. She got onto Dana White's Contender Series, got the win by armbar, and she's already picked up a unanimous decision win in her UFC debut.
Yeah, but that one was, that one wasn't a robbery. I think maybe it could have been a split decision down the line, but that was against Ernesta Karakait, who is like the Olympic swimmer Lithuanian lady, who looked pretty good. Barbosa definitely did not like she won by unanimous decision, which was, I think, reasonable, but she didn't just dominate the fight. It wasn't some ridiculous blowout, right? Like she didn't look that good. No. Is what I'm trying to say.
No, and I remember that fight.
Yeah, that was just a few months ago now.
Yeah, so she's 2 months preparation for her next fight. Barboza
I got to go with Maverick, dude. Maverick, good grappling. I think that she might be a good prospect. They're putting Barboza up against her to see, hey, was it a fluke in your debut? Do you really have something in you? I honestly think Maverick will probably just win by submission.
You know what? I'm seeing it now that you say it. Now that you say it, I'm seeing it because Barboza, she won that last fight largely via punching power.
Yeah.
Now, it is tough to err on the side that the Brazilian girl isn't going to have any grappling.
Like that's what I'm always thinking, right? But I don't even think she did much grappling in that fight. Like, I think she had a little bit.
Yeah.
One sub attempt, that's what it is. So I don't know. It's not showing of any grappling, but it seems like that's largely like Maverick's game plan is grappling.
Yeah, you are absolutely right about that. I'm almost psyching myself out because I ahead of time picked Miranda Maverick. Yeah, you're right. It's like, oh fuck, now he took my pick. But no, I think I'm probably going to stick with what I picked ahead of time. I'm going to keep Miranda Maverick.
Oh, God.
She's been looking good. She's been progressing. Yes, she is 5'3", but that's not that big a deal down at women's flyweight.
Will the viewers bet on the UCF parlay?
Goodness gracious, I might. Before that, we have Loic Radzhabov. Oh, fuck, dude. What a tough...
Radzhabov? Come on, that was pretty easy.
I mean, sometimes you look at these names, man, and the H really just throws you off. He's fighting Trey Ogden. We have a Tajikistan boy, Central Asia time.
Central Asia back. His nickname is the Tajik Tank. I like that.
It's a pretty good fight name. Taking on Trey Ogden. These guys are pretty deep down on the undercard. Not notable names, but neither one of them are all that bad. Hey, funny how Kurt Hollabaugh is Trey's last win, but he's lower on the card. Strange.
What's going on there?
Very strange. Now, Loic is coming off of a nice KO win in his last fight, actually just this past March, and he is also just 1 year younger than Trey Ogden. These guys are the same height. Trey has the longer arms. Okay, so all just like the bare stats out of the way. I get the feeling that Trey is better on the feet. I don't think he's faster, and I don't know that he's stronger, but he seems just more capable and defensively sound on the feet.
Are you sure Loic's a grappler? Am I crazy?
I mean, he could be a striker now.
But I swear he was had a boxing background or something. Like, not that you can't grapple, obviously, if you have boxing, but I thought he was a boxer.
Oh, I saw something about him wrestling when he was younger. I could be mixing stuff up.
I mean, you wrestled when you were younger. You a grappler?
Sometimes. Really, in this one, I am partially picking off of vibes. I'm picking Trey Ogden. He is not currently the favorite, but I don't know. Something about this fight is just telling me that Trey is going to get this one.
Yeah, I could actually see a submission, and this is what I thought when I was looking stuff up before, but I thought Ogden maybe wins this one by submission, but then I thought the last time I bet against a man from Central Asia, I got fucking annihilated, so I'm going to pick Loic Radzhabov.
All right, finally splitting our
parlay has been ruined.
Oh,
thank God.
Well, not mine. All right, and before that, we have Luana Carolina versus Lucy
vibes-based
Pudilova.
Women's fight picking, where we just pick based on vibes, because they're both kind of I don't know.
They're both kind of uninteresting and haven't done a whole bunch.
Hey, women are always interesting.
I'm picking Lucy Pudilova. I've seen Luana Carolina fight before. She always acts like she's the toughest girl in the world, and then just isn't. Also, just sometimes there are fighters who it seems like they have trouble hitting a target. And Luana is one of those that I've seen her have trouble just hitting a stationary target. So can't pick her. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Luana Carolina. I think she looks pretty good. My issue with Pudilova is that she lost to Edwards, who is my least favorite women's fighter. So that's just I have no respect now. So I'm going to go with Luana Carolina. Let's go women.
All right, fair enough. Okay, I mean, now we're really splitting our picks. Once you get further down the card... further down the card...
How is Usman fighting? What, he's the early prelim? What happened?
What happened to Usman? How did he gain all this weight? So, Muhammad Usman versus Thomas Peterson. This is the heavyweight brother of the former welterweight champion, Kamaru Usman. Muhammad Usman really seems to be just a poster boy for I used to use steroids. 6'2" versus 6'1". These are some short heavyweights. neither one of these guys in any lifetime, if you gave them 4 lifetimes to train, neither one of them is ever getting near a UFC belt. But Muhammad Usman is in fact the brother of a former UFC champion, so I'm going to guess that he's getting a little bit of special treatment. He is also legitimately really strong and powerful. He's just also kind of a spaz. He's not very good. He can't string techniques together. I haven't seen him ever use like a good combination on the feet. I remember seeing him in his UFC debut where he got a knockout, and he hasn't got a knockout since. That all having been said, I have to assume he can take out Thomas Peterson. If he can't, why is he in the UFC, you know?
Yeah, that's like kind of what my thinking was on this as well. God, we think so much alike. We're like, damn, dude, we should do a podcast.
Fuck.
Peterson, he doesn't look very good in his UFC debut. He wasn't like horrific. He loses by decision. I'm almost putting too much thought into this. It's a fucking early prelim decision, but he did get significantly striked out. He was getting, I think he threw more punches, but just not all of them were significant strikes. A lot of them were getting blocked. I don't know. Again, Usman, there must be something, right? There's got to be something in that Usman genetic pool. I'll go with Usman.
Yeah, hard to pick against Usman's brother. And that's been our picks top to bottom for UFC Fight Night Lemos versus Jandiroba. We'll be watching. I hope you are too. And we'll catch you probably early Monday with our post-fight podcast. We'll see you then.
And if we're wrong, forget about all the things we said here today. And don't forget to love women every day. It's a lifestyle.